So, today we're digging into this paper from 1960. And honestly, it's so spot on, it feels less like a research proposal and more like someone just handed us a prophecy.
Okay, I want you to just picture this for a second. It's 1960, right? Computers are these giant room-sized behemoths. You feed them punch cards. And then this guy, a psychologist and computer scientist named J.C.R. Licklider, he just sits down and basically draws a map of the world we live in today. And get this, he wasn't just guessing, he was laying out a blueprint. And it was all because of this one really personal, really frustrating problem he was having.
And that entire problem, it boils down to this one number, 85%. So what on earth is that?
Well, it turns out that number represented wasted time. Yeah. Licklider did this little informal study on himself, and he was just floored to find out that most of his time, his thinking time, wasn't spent on, the big, creative, insightful stuff. Nope, it was spent on pure drudgery.
And this is what that 85% actually was. He had this great phrase for it, getting into a position to think. It was all the grunt work, the searching for info, the number crunching, plotting graphs, all the tedious mechanical stuff you had to do before you could even begin to have a real breakthrough. He realized, wait a minute, all this stuff that's eating up my time, a machine could do it, and probably do it better.
And that's where this paper comes in. Man-computer symbiosis. In it, he laid out this totally radical solution. He wasn't just talking about a better tool, like a faster calculator. He was talking about a completely new kind of partnership.
And he chose that word symbiosis so carefully. It's great. He kicks off the paper with this amazing analogy about a fig tree and a tiny insect. See, the tree literally can't reproduce without this one specific insect, and the insect can't eat without that specific tree. They absolutely depend on each other, and together they thrive. That, Licklider said, is what our relationship with computers should look like.
Now, Licklider was really clear about what he meant and what he didn't mean. He said, look, this isn't just about a mechanically extended man, the way a hammer is just an extension of your arm. It's more than that. And he wasn't predicting some kind of sci-fi artificial intelligence that would eventually make humans obsolete. No, he was talking about a third way, a tight, cooperative partnership where you take the best of what humans do and the best of what machines do, and you put them together to create something way more powerful than either one could ever be on its own.
Okay, so what does this perfect partnership actually look like in practice? Well, Licklider was super clear about who does what.
He saw this perfect balance. The human's job is to steer the ship, right? You set the goals, you ask the big questions, you come up with the theories, and you make the final judgment calls. The computer, it does all that grunt work, that 85% stuff we talked about. The number crunching, the charting, running the simulations. Basically, the human asks the questions, and the computer finds the answers.
And this really gets to the heart of it. Licklider quoted this famous mathematician who basically said, the question isn't what's the answer. The real question is what's the question. And that's where humans shine. The whole point of this symbiotic relationship was to pull the computer into that process of figuring out what to even ask, to help us come up with better, smarter questions from the get-go.
So the vision is incredible, right? Just mind-blowing for 1960. But Licklider was no dreamer. He was a practical guy. He knew this stuff wasn't just going to magically appear, so he actually laid out a roadmap. He listed the exact technical problems that had to be solved to make it happen. And this is where it gets really crazy, because his roadmap basically became a series of prophecies.
He pointed to 4 big hurdles. First, you had a major speed mismatch between humans and computers. Then, there were issues with memory, just storing all this data. Third was the language barrier. How do we even talk to these things? And finally, the hardware itself. Things like typewriters were just way too slow and clunky for the kind of fast-paced teamwork he was imagining.
So, to tackle that speed and cost problem, his idea was to build these huge, centralized computers. He called them thinking centers. And they'd be like a library and a supercomputer all rolled into one.
But how would you actually use one?
Well, he wrote that you could easily imagine a whole network of these centers, all connected to each other by what he called wideband communication lines. Sound familiar? He was, for all intents and purposes, describing the internet, decades before it existed. And he would actually go on to help create its forerunner, ARPANET.
And get this, the idea of a bunch of different people all sharing the power of one big computer at the same time, that's a concept called time sharing. And it's the direct ancestor of cloud computing. The thing that powers pretty much everything we do online today. Okay, so next up was that input problem.
Licklider was so frustrated with the slow, clunky typewriters of his day. He just dreamed of a way to interact with a computer that felt as natural as picking up a pencil and doodling on a pad of paper. Where you could just draw a graph or sketch out an idea and the computer would just get it.
And his solution was something he called a desk surface display. Picture this, an angled screen sitting right on your desk. You could write on it, you could draw on it, you could point at things, and the computer would instantly understand what you were doing, maybe clean up your lines, and display it right back to you. I mean, think about that. He was basically describing the graphical user interface, the mouse, and the tablet, all rolled into one idea way back in 1960. It's just incredible.
And here's the thing. Licklider wasn't just an ideas guy. He didn't just write this paper and then, move on. He actually went on to lead the agency that funded the research to solve these exact problems. He put his money where his mouth was and helped turn his own vision into our reality.
And you can just watch the dominoes fall over the next few decades. His ideas? They lead directly to ARPANET, which became the internet. The research he funded? It gave us the mouse and the graphical user interface that we all use. And now, today, the smartphone in your pocket is maybe the purest expression of his vision. A super powerful, networked computer that's a true symbiotic partner for billions of people.
And that really brings us back to the most important point of all. For Licklider, the tech itself was never the goal. This wasn't just about building faster machines to solve the same old problems. It was about using machines to help us become smarter thinkers, to help us ask better questions and augment our own intellect.
So, that leaves us with one last big question. We are absolutely living in the symbiotic world he dreamed up. I mean, we are connected to our machines more tightly than ever. But is it working? Is this partnership actually freeing up our brains from that 85% of drudgery, letting us be more creative, more insightful? Or have we just invented a whole new kind of digital busy work for ourselves? It's definitely something to think about.